Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Can you tell, for the guys that don't know at home, who you are, what is it you do, who do you work for at the moment, a bit of context about what's going on in your life?
Okay, so I'm Michael Ives, Group IT Director for a company called Go Inspire. We are a marketing performance partner, so we specialise in that end-to-end marketing platform, i.e. data ingestion and analysis, all the way through to spitting out physical print at the end that gets popped through your letterbox. I cover off all traditional aspects of IT, so your service desk, cybersecurity, networking, infrastructure, all of your traditional technologies.
Makes perfect sense. Okay. Well, look, we start with the same question with everybody that comes onto the lookout. So, in your opinion, what are the traits and characteristics that make up a great leader in today's market?
I think honesty is a key part of it. Being able to be honest with your team and be honest with the people above you is really key, because if you can't have those conversations and say this is right, this is wrong, or I might have messed up there, you're not going to succeed. On top of that, I think being strong in terms of sticking to the things that you think are right, voicing those, but being flexible enough to work with the business as opposed to going on your own agenda. I think if you can do those things well, you'll have a strong team who will follow you and work with you and you'll get the best out of them.
Honesty is an interesting one, isn't it? It's sometimes it can be difficult to be honest sometimes. Because you've got your team, you've got the business, you also tone the line of your own job and obviously try not to upset people. How do you create a place where people can be honest in business?
You've got to avoid that blame culture. You've got to make sure that the team and yourself as well can hold your hands up to something and learn from it, not be punished for it. There's a time and a place for punishing people if it's a repeated mistake or something, gross misconduct, but they're few and far between, aren't they? If you, I think you've really just got to make sure that you are just open and let them be approachable, let your team come to you with issues, address them, work with them, not just say, well, you've messed up, go and fix it. Be there to support them in fixing it so it doesn't happen again. Be there with them to help them learn and progress and develop, whilst also making sure they know where they need to learn and progress and develop, not just go, oh, you've done a great job, well done, when actually it wasn't.
I think clear expectations, isn't it?
Clear expectations.
I think most people want that. They don't want the ambiguity, do they, of fake praise, going, oh, great job. They want to know where they've gone wrong or where they can get better at. It's how you phrase it, isn't it? It's language you use is really important.
And it's learning the people you're working with. You've got to adapt that language. Some people love it when you are just direct and very blunt. Some people don't. You have to beat around the bush a little bit. It's learning the people that you're with.
Being a bit of a comedian. It's well, I was excited to get you on, and then when I was looking through your background, and this is taken from LinkedIn, by the way, so tell me if there's any inaccuracies.
That should all be spot on.
Cool, brilliant. So, 2016, you were a second line engineer.
Yes.
Fast forward to 2023, you're an IT director.
Yes.
That's a pretty rapid change. Like, going back to when you were a second line engineer back in 2016, could you imagine you'd be at this point right now?
Honestly, no. But back then, I worked for a company where I had a person in the business who I was very fond of. I think they were an exceptional person who was very talented, and he helped me grow and develop. And from that day, I decided that's what I wanted to do. And he was a director. And I thought, this is me. I have the skill set to do that. Why can't I do that? So from there on out, I always aimed for it. I pushed myself and made sure that every decision I made in my career, from day to day, all the way through to what was my plan in 5 years, was progressing along that path.
How did that person help you realise that, or help you get to that? You can name drop them as well if you want.
I won't name drop them. They were just open and honest with me. I had no experience in IT when I started there, and he gave me a shot, and he said, look, we'll teach you, I'll help you learn. He was network qualified from years gone by and still very, very technically capable. He was great with people, and he interacted with me in the way that I needed, which was firm, fair, and honest. And he gave me plenty of opportunities to be the best I could be. So for me, that was all I needed.
Interesting, isn't it? Having someone that early on in your career obviously had a massive impact on you. Is that something you take into now, being in the leadership position you are?
Yes.
That's when you think about consciously?
Absolutely. I'm really, really fortunate that I've worked with some very talented people over the years who have taken me under their wing. They've sat with me when there have been problems. They've given me chances to look at things that, in all honesty, my role at the time shouldn't have been looking at. And I've always tried to do the same thing for people around me, because I had that opportunity, so everyone else should have.
Yeah, you're in a privileged position, aren't you, in the role that you're in, to be able to impact somebody's life and change their trajectory.
Yeah.
And give them opportunity.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we can forget that, being in the day-to-day, you're dealing with problems coming at you left, right and centre. Sometimes you can forget that, okay, actually a big part of my job is to make sure that Sarah or Dave gets to a position that's going to improve them.
Yeah. I say to my team, I don't begrudge any of them leaving. I never will. Because as long as they leave for a role that is bigger and better than what they started with me, I'll give them the best reference, and I'll work to make sure that they get everything they need to hit the ground running. If they leave for a lesser role, or because I've done something wrong, I take that very personally. Yeah. Because that's a failing on my part, and that shouldn't happen.
And when you were working as an IT manager, I think, before you moved into an IT
Yes.
Role? So an IT manager, a fairly smallish team, was it a team of 2, was it?
Yes, yeah.
And then you jumped up to go Inspire, a much bigger team. Before we get into that, I'm interested to, how do you think you were able to make that transition to do that? What happened previously for you to be able to go to an opportunity at Go Inspire with a much bigger team in an IT director role? That's a big step up.
You can probably guess the answer to that already. I had an incredible boss who gave me the opportunities and pushed me and exposed me to everything we possibly could in the business, all the commercials, all of the management meetings, and his plan was for me to be his successor. That was the plan from day one. So because we knew that, and because we knew that was what we were going to do, I was able to not just be an IT manager by the end of it who was doing technical stuff. I was effectively the IT director. He was able to focus on a completely different part of the business because I had IT under control because of his leadership and guidance and help.
Yeah, because when I talk to IT directors and their career path, most of them find it really difficult to go from the head of IT or IT manager position and step up into an IT director role within a new company. So not many people give them that opportunity to go, okay, you're a head of IT here, an IT manager here, come join us as an IT director. I think the reason that is people want somebody who's got a bit of a track record, and they feel like they're in safer hands if somebody's done that role previously.
Yeah.
Why do you think Go Inspire said to you, you're the guy for us, Mike? I know you've not done that role before, but we want you to be in that position for us.
I think a big part of it was my technical ability. They wanted someone who had a strong technical background and still had a finger on the pulse. They are quite a tech-heavy business, and me having that as well as the management experience just clicked. That was what they were looking for. I fit that box, and again, I had a great leader when I started who took an opportunity, really liked me to the point where I think my second interview, he just said to me, "Oh well, I'm going to give you the job. Don't worry."
Brilliant. Yeah.
And I still ended up coming back for a third interview anyway, but he'd already told me at that point. But yeah, I was right place, right time, as well as technically strong.
So if somebody's in that position now, so they're IT manager, head of IT, look, I really want to be an IT director in my next move, or in the next 3 to 5 years, that's where I want to get to. And they're not getting opportunities in their current place. The person above them is not going to move on. Would you say that actually, even if you went to a sideways move into a head of IT, another IT manager role, but you moved in that position with a great manager, you know that person's got a great manager, would you recommend they do that, or would you recommend they stay where they are and try and keep applying for opportunities?
That's a really tough one, because I'm not in those shoes, right? Everyone's got to make a decision that they feel is right for them. My advice to someone in that position would be, if you currently have a great leader, learn as much as you can from them. Take all the time that you can to absorb everything they know, to the point that if they get hit by a bus, you can step straight into their shoes and do what they're doing.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, and you feel that an opportunity at a different business in the same role as you're in currently, but you have a great leader, or you could have a great leader, do it. Absolutely do it. Because worst case scenario is you learn something.
Yeah. Because that's interesting. You've had a whole career of great leaders by the sound of it.
Absolutely.
And it's proofs in the pudding. 2016 second line engineer, 2023 an IT director. I think it's credit to you, but also obviously credit to those managers as well who've done that. Brilliant. So I came aware of you through LinkedIn.
Yes.
So there was a LinkedIn post which said, "For the first time since I've been here, the IT team feels like a team, and that's because of you." So you had that feedback.
Yes.
Within Go Inspire, which I thought was brilliant. And really, you might tell me I'm wrong here, but what they're talking about there is culture, isn't it? You created a new culture.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
Honestly, it's part of it is recruiting the right people. You know, I've always worked on the ethos of change the team or change the team. If you put the right bums in the seats or train the people to be the right bum in that seat, the work becomes less of a chore and more enjoyable. But a big thing for me was that unfortunately some of the team I had weren't right. We swapped them for people who were passionate about technology and passionate about what they do, who then became the right bum for the right seat. And that just meant that we all gelled. We were all passionate about what we do. We all love tech. We all love being better. And when you have people who are like that, doing something they love, naturally conversation becomes normal. Naturally engaging in a positive way with the business becomes normal. So that really, for me, was probably the biggest factor, as well as me just being there to support them. I am quite technically capable, and being able to sit in on those conversations and challenge them or validate what they're doing gives people such a big boost that you just getting the best out of people.
So, yeah, starts with the right people in the business. That can be tricky, right? You're coming into a new role. You've got some people. They might have said before that we've got a bit of a challenge around culture, or challenge around a few people, a few individuals. You're in the new IT director position. You've stepped up. How did you deal with that personally? Because you would have had to have had some difficult conversations.
Yes.
During that time. Did that take its toll on you? How did you approach that?
It did have an impact on me. You sometimes get into a position where you're dealing with an individual who is not performing for whatever reason, and they will more often than not tell you what's going on in their personal life, and they'll give you reasons as to why they're not like that. Some of those reasons are really silly reasons. Some of those are really gut-wrenching, heartbreaking reasons. And for me, the key thing was just being able to completely detach myself from that and put them in the situation, in the room, and when you're having those conversations, to say, while I understand this is what is expected of you in the workplace, this is what you need to do, I will help with X, or I will point you in the right direction for Y, but the onus has to be on you, and you have to perform to what we expect you to. Some people are okay with that, some people crumble at that. And yeah, there were nights where you go home from work and you think, oh man, I need a drink. Like, why am I doing this? But you've got to remember that being a leader, you are there to get the best out of the business. Because ultimately, if the business succeeds, your team have jobs, they have money to feed their families, and they have money to have the life that they have. If you don't perform and the business fails, well, you're all in the same boat at the job centre, aren't you?
Yeah.
You've just got to remember that.
Yeah. It's a tough situation, isn't it? And I think every situation is different. How did you... I'm not sure of the situation, whether you walked in and you got told there were some difficult individuals or not, but once you identified that there were some individuals there that weren't part of the future, or at least were being difficult at that time, is your first thought, okay, how do I help them get there? How do I help them change into what I want them to be? Or is your first thought, that's just not going to work, I'm going to have to change the personnel?
Personally, for me, it's how can I help them? I like to help people. That's, something, call it a strength, call it a weakness, whatever, I don't mind. But I like to help people. So the first thing for me is always, how can we help them be the best version of themselves? Most of the time, it does work. Most of the time, you can come up with a plan and you can get those people to where you want them to be and where they want to be. In rare occasions, you can't. At that point, you just have to accept that it's not going to work because it's not right for them, and help them transition into a role that is right for them. Because sometimes you can have right person, wrong role.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, I think a positive way of looking at it and the way you frame it in your mind is you're doing them a disservice if you just let them continue not performing.
Yeah.
Because they won't be enjoying their position.
No.
The people around them won't be enjoying that, so you're doing them a disservice as well.
Yeah.
So I think if you frame it that way, it's more positive, because like you said, you're helping them transition into hopefully something better.
Yeah.
Longer term. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so then you did some hiring.
Yes.
How did you make sure during that hiring process that the people you were hiring were going to be the right people that you needed at that time?
I've done a lot of interviews over the years. I've lost count of how many people I've interviewed over the years. I remember I had one role, we probably interviewed 40 to 45 candidates.
Wow.
Because I had a HR manager once who said to me, if you think that there's a chance they might be able to do the role, meet them. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. If you think someone could do it, it takes more of your time, but meet them. And I've found some amazing candidates like that. So for me, it was very much meeting as many of the candidates as I could and having a nice structured approach to how I'd communicate with them or how I would interview them. So for me, that's, I'll have a sheet. I will literally have a script that we're going through. And on there, we're going to talk about the business, we're going to talk about the role, we're going to talk about them, go through their CV. We're then going to have technical questions. And then we're going to have some more soft skills questions. How do you approach a situation? You've been asked to do something, but you've got something else to do that's more important. MD comes banging on your door and says, do this now. How do you deal with that? And it's giving them the opportunity to talk and letting them really express and give you their fullest answer, that very quickly you can gauge what a person's going to be like in those situations. You've done plenty of recruitment over the years. Over time, you gain experience as to what you're looking for and what some of the red flags are and what some of the really shining lights are. This person's amazing. Oh my goodness, what an answer! If they can do that in the real world, absolutely, let's get them in. They'll be great. So for me, it's about that interview process, meeting people, and I've had some feedback on that. Some of it's really positive. Some people just say, "Oh my God, I was so nervous because you just stare at me. You just eye contact and you just left me to talk." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, because I want to hear you."
So that's interesting, isn't it? I guess give people the space to talk and to explore the answer a little bit more. Sometimes you might be too quick to move on to your next question on your list. Sometimes a pause is good because they've got to fill that silence and they'll give you a little bit more, perhaps, than just a stock answer. Have you, and you may not, but during your time of doing all those interviews, have you found yourself one question where you go, okay, this is a really good question, I love asking people, and I love the answers that come back, and the answers are either going to tell me, not that they're right or wrong, but will give me a strong indication of where we're at. You may not have a killer question like that, but if you do, it'd be interesting for people to listen to it.
I don't think I have a killer question for that, but for me, a good indicator of how passionate a person is about something is when you ask them how they keep up with current trends. How do you develop yourself to be the best you can in tech? Oh, well, I watch YouTube. Okay. Yeah. What else? Or some people will just rattle off, oh, well, I've been doing this in my spare time, I've been working on this course, I meet up with friends 3 times a week and talk about their role, so I learn what they're doing. I'm on apps, I'm on various websites and forums, and they'll list them all off. They won't be vague. They'll be, I'm on this website doing this, I've done this project, or tell me about the project. I've done X, Y, and Z within the project. When people are passionate about things, they can really reel those things off. So that for me is really a good indicator of how passionate someone is and how likely they are to do their own personal development outside of working hours, so that when they come into work, they're giving their best.
Yeah. And we've all made bad hires.
Yes.
You can never get it right 100% of the time. What mistakes did you make in the early days, perhaps, when you're interviewing, that you've sort of learned from now, going, okay, I know I can assess that better now, or I made a bad judgment there because of X, Y, and Z. What were those mistakes that you made early on?
I remember I hired somebody once who worked for a grand total of 3 weeks before they just didn't come back.
Okay.
They just upped and left, and we couldn't get hold of them for love nor money. And for me, I think what I learned from that was that some people will tell you what you want to hear if you lead them in the right direction. So from that day on, I was able to take a little bit of a step back in the interview process, let them talk more, leave those longer, slightly more awkward silences, and hear what they were saying, even when they weren't saying anything. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, if you might get a positive answer to one of your initial questions, and you'll get excited about making that hire and go, oh, yeah, I think this person's the one. And you won't leave those pauses, and you won't dig a little bit deeper than perhaps you should have done initially, and you'll get excited, you'll make the hire, and you go, okay, we haven't done our due diligence there.
Yeah.
You've got to follow the process. And
it's not being afraid to pry either. Well, not pry, but dig, like you said, dig a little bit deeper. Ask the slightly more awkward questions of, okay, well, you've done that project. What did you do in it? Oh, well, I did this. Okay, what did you do in that? Not sure. Or they'll give you, the specifics. And that helps a lot to gauge what, how involved they are in projects, how hard they're going to work on certain things. And sometimes you can gauge a real passion for, yes, I loved doing X technology. Oh, I worked on the other project, but I'm not really sure on the specifics. Well, you're clearly not interested in that one, are you? This is the one you love to do. And having that knowledge, again, you can tailor it. So, well, we do a lot of that in this business. We don't do a lot of that. So you're probably going to get very bored very quickly. So maybe this role isn't right for you.
Yeah, interesting. And we touched on it earlier. You went to a much bigger team. So, 2-man team to, was it 18 or 20 or so people?
Yeah, thereabouts.
Much, much bigger.
Yes.
Would you have gone, knowing what you know now, would you still make that move?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because you have to get out of your own comfort zone as well. The more you do that, the bigger your comfort zone becomes. And for me, I'm not one to sit and do what makes my life easy. I'm just not that person. So going from 2 people who were quite self-sufficient, once we got to that point, to a much bigger team of people who, some of them were, needed practically sitting on all day long to say, do this, all right, now click here, now do that, to some people who you could just say, right, here's a task, let me know when it's done. And they'll go off and completely own it and do it and get it done and come back and say, all done, sir, aye. Yeah. It's being able to, for me, the biggest learning point was not being able to just sit and do the tech with one person. Because I love tech, I love doing it. And I had to learn very quickly that I can't just sit and do this product. I'm really passionate about this platform and this technology. Oh, but I'm going to have to leave you to it because I need to go and plan this piece over here. I need to go and support over there, or I've got to go and interview people. I've got to go and put all of you 3 together and get you on a training course over there to support that better. Or I've got to learn about more of the technologies that we've got. It's very easy to get bogged down in the things that you love doing and the bits you're passionate about. But I had to really stop myself from doing that and go and focus on the things that were part of the bigger picture in the bigger role.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I speak to lots of IT directors who make that move. They go from being not an individual contributor, but in a smaller team, like I said, they're very hands-on still. They move to a larger team, and the control's no longer fully with you.
No.
It's gone. You've got to put, and the key word's trust, isn't
Yes.
it? You've got to trust other people in your team. That's a really tough thing to do.
It is.
Because all your career, like you come from that technical background, all your career, you've been in full control over how, almost full control, there's obviously external factors, but full control of what you can deliver.
Yep.
Now you're delivering through other people. How do you come to better terms with that?
You've got to make sure you've got the right people in the team. That's a key thing for me, because trust comes very quickly when you see people who can deliver things with very little input from you. It's also being confident enough in your own ability, in your own skin, to say, okay, that's probably not how I would have done it, but what you've done is different, and it's not wrong, it's not right, it's doing what we wanted, the task is complete, well done. Okay, now I've learned something, so next time I can challenge you on that, or you might come up with something new. It's not being afraid to not be the biggest, strongest technical brain in the room. It's that superhero mindset. I'm not the superhero. My team are the superheroes. So I trust them to do the role because they are the experts, they're the SMEs. I'm there to facilitate that, to support that, and to make sure that they're able to do that. I'm, I suppose, like Alfred to Batman. Thank you.
So we've talked a lot about leadership, about your background, growing your team. One of the things we spoke about in preparation for this was that recently you preferred a buy not build approach when it comes to implementing new systems.
Yeah.
And I think people have been round the houses with this. Oh, actually, I prefer build not buy, and now buy not build, or we can just integrate it all and then we run into problems. Why is it that you prefer buy not build?
For me, if you buy a platform, you have a lot more people who can support it. You know, you have a team of people who are experts who built it from the ground up, so they know exactly how it works and what you can and can't do with it. Otherwise, you've got to, if you build it, it takes time to build, it takes money and resource, and then you've got to keep a team of people around to support it. And if you want to do something new with it, or you've got to develop it again, in my mind, it's just a waste of time. There is a time and a place for it, some things, but for the majority of products, I will buy them rather than build.
Yeah. Have you got a process yet? Have you got that narrowed down in terms of, okay, we need X solution, how are we going to go out and find a provider or system that's going to solve that?
Yeah. Generally speaking, we will make sure we'll do our don't know what you call it exactly, but our matrix of requirements, and we'll go out to some of our trusted partners and say, this is what we want to do. Do you have any vendors who do this, or you can point us in the right direction? Sometimes you'll just sit up late at night Googling, find out what it is, or I'm going to dig into it, research YouTube. Other times you just happen upon it because someone in your team has used something once upon a time that they thought was great. You look at it and go, oh, actually, yes, this works.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have some people have got like a scoring system they do sometimes for this, or is it your case it's more of a, once we find that solution, let's bring it in straight away?
Yeah, I'm not one to do a scoring system because it just slows the process down. I would rather if we think the solution can do what we want to do and it ticks our fundamental requirements, i.e. has it got an API that is completely open and we can integrate with other things? Yes. All right. Wicked. What else can it do? Does it do the core things we want to do with it? Yes. What's the support function like? Great. Wonderful. Why would we go and score it out of 10 for each one of those points and then go and look at another platform and another platform? It just doesn't. It just slows things down.
Red tape.
Yeah.
Fine. And one of the things I was really interested in again in the prep was that you've been part of removing an MSP and bringing resource back in-house. I think that's happening a lot at the moment. Lots of organisations or lots of IT directors are moving into roles going, we've got the MSP, but actually the service being provided is really poor. The SLAs are just not being stuck to. We think we want to bring it in-house. So first of all, why would somebody want to bring the tech team in-house rather than rely on an MSP?
I think the common thing I've seen amongst my peers is that the MSP is not meeting the requirements of the business. And I personally believe that a lot of the time that's through poor management on the MSP side as well as on the business's side. There's not a strong relationship there. So because of that, communication breaks down. No one's really clear exactly what the service does and doesn't do. It's not communicated to the rest of the business what they do and don't do. And because of that, the MSP just gets a very negative. They just get a very negative vibe from the rest of the business. And then people go, well, we're paying them all this money and they're not doing what we want. Well, let's just bring it in house and we'll do it ourselves. We control it and own the entire process then.
Yeah. Would you always want it in house? Do you think, or do you think there is a place sometimes to have?
Oh, absolutely, there is a place for it. It depends on the business and what you're doing. When I took out the MSP, I was in a fortunate enough position that the business wanted to invest in tech. They wanted to be the absolute best in their industry with tech. So I had free reign to say, right, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to move everything to the cloud. Okay, do it. We're going to get rid of Citrix and all of these old thin clients and all of that rubbish. We're going to go laptops. We want all our staff to work remotely. How do we do it? Let's make it secure. Let's invest in good equipment. Let's invest in good people in the business. And on top of that, we want to take all of that kit and that data and we want to feed it together and we want to report off the back of it and help use that data, drive how we as a business move forward and function. MSPs can't always do that, or they certainly can't always do it at the pace that the business requires. Sometimes they can. Sometimes if you're a really large organisation, you can have a huge MSP, and because you're putting a lot of money through them, you effectively have a lot of sway, and you can have a lot of people who can manage that relationship and be on top of the MSP to get what you need. I've seen cases of it working really well. I've seen cases of it going horrendously wrong.
Yeah. So there's not a right or wrong about having an MSP or not. It's going to be dependent on.
Yeah, I think it's a case by case basis.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Okay. So the IT director role, you've been in that position now for a year and a half,
thereabouts.
Two years or so. How important do you think is? I guess we've talked a lot about IT director down and your team. I want to talk a little bit about IT director and up. So how important is that relationship between the IT director and the board or the MD or the COO, whoever it is that you report into? How important is that relationship?
Very. Very. IT is a cost centre. We just spend money. We don't make money directly, right? So for us, if you don't have a strong relationship with the senior stakeholders in the business, when you need to do something that is ultimately going to protect the business, free the business up to do more added value work, or it's going to support them in their growth opportunities, if you don't have that relationship, getting that money, getting that buy-in for the pain that you might incur during that process is borderline impossible. They're just going to go, oh, you lot are miserable and all you do is spend money and we don't see anything from it. No.
Yeah. How do you develop that relationship then? How do you get it to a point where it's really smooth?
It's just talking to people. Not baffling them with tech jargon because they don't care. Keeping it as short and sweet as possible, and then just being around, being a face in the office, dropping them emails and having that, just building up that rapport. A lot of people play golf. I've recently taken up golf. Talk to them about it. Tell them you had a terrible experience or ask them for a bit of advice. Just be around the office, talk about cars, get involved with things they like, and more often than not, if you find common ground with them, they're going to be more receptive to listening to what you want to do. But on top of that, when you do ask for something or you do say this is going to happen, deliver it. Manage the expectations properly. We're going to do it in 6 months. It's going to take us that long to do it. Do it in 6 months. Don't go back to them after 5 months and say, oh, it's going to take an additional 3. If you think it's going to take longer, let them know as soon as you can. Or if you told them you're going to do it in 6 months and you've done it in 4, great. Go and tell them. Make sure they know.
Yeah. What you said at the beginning of there was interesting about language, because that's come up a few times when I've been speaking to IT directors in terms of when you're dealing with the CEO or the board, is being able to talk in their language or convert into layman's terms is incredibly important. Also, like you said, IT is a cost centre, so IT is always constantly fighting for budget. Okay, I'm sure there's 1,000,001 things that you want to do right now within within IT, but you can't do everything.
Yeah.
How do you go into those conversations where you are discussing budget? Have you learned anything over the last year and a half which has enabled you to win more budget than perhaps?
Yes.
Signed off?
I would say that the key thing is to keep it short, keep it factual, and just help them understand what the benefits are and the reasons for doing it and what the risk is if you don't do it. Sometimes you are going to do something that has very little visible benefit to the business, but the risk of not doing it could be the difference between you getting a massive cybersecurity breach or a breach that gets cut off fairly quickly. And the risk of that then becomes we could lose X amount of money, damage our reputation, or we could contain it, control it, have a very quick report off the back of that we can then let people know about. It's being able to put it to them in a way that they see a benefit to doing it.
That risk is a really interesting one, because I think most people will immediately go to what you said initially, is like, what are the benefits of doing this? Of course, there's loads of benefits of doing the tech, but the risk of not doing it is, I think, really powerful.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can forget that. And you can talk in that in pound notes, right, which often MDs and board members can understand a little bit better and makes their ears prick up. Like you said, if we don't do this, it might cause a cybersecurity attack. They're like, well, what does that mean? But it could mean a fine of X amount.
Exactly.
And days down of the business where you're going to lose X amount of revenue. I think being able to put in those, quantify it.
Yeah.
Definitely helps. Definitely helps. Okay. You've obviously been IT director role for about 2 years now, but you've transitioned and been in a leadership role for a while. Do you think the role of a leader, or what's expected of a leader, has changed at all in the last 5 years or so?
I think there's a lot more pressure on certainly tech leaders to deliver more with less. A lot of funding and budget that you might get in IT, a large chunk of that is usually one for things like cybersecurity. Some businesses don't really prioritise the training and the development of your staff. So you have a lot of people who might not be as trained as you would like them to be, who haven't had the development that you would like them to be, but they still have to provide an increasing level of service, be that more uptime, be that implementing new services or supporting on projects and deploying projects that maybe 5 to 10 years ago they wouldn't have got involved with. Reporting is a prime example of that. That's sort of becoming more of an IT function. I think that's probably the biggest change I've noticed, that there is a lot more pressure to deliver more, because tech drives businesses now. Businesses have gone, tech is what gets us forward. So do it, don't break it. And by the way, we also want to do this and sell it on to customers.
Yeah, do more with less is definitely the thing. What about in terms of the people you manage? Do you think they expect something different now from their leaders, or expect more from their leaders now than perhaps they did? No's an acceptable answer as well.
I think that they just expect their leaders to be more involved than maybe they used to be. If you go back a period of time, an IT director, a head of IT manager could be very hands-off and just be out of the way and get involved when things went wrong. Whereas now I think teams are looking to leaders to be involved and do more of the do with them, as opposed to just sit there and bark orders.
In the trenches a little bit more.
Yeah.
I guess it's easier to win some quick respect that way, isn't it, as well? Because you're doing what you say you're asking them to do, you're going to do it as well.
Yeah.
It's not always possible, is it? Because you've got other demands that you've got to look after.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I get it. Okay, fine. What do you think of the 3 main challenges right now for IT directors? What do you reckon universally are people facing? What's your 3 main challenges?
Cybersecurity is always going to be number one for any tech leader from here on, from here to forever, I imagine. The business is pushed back a lot more to know what is our threat landscape, what are you doing about it, and how, and what has happened and why did it happen. By the way, we want to do this, can you make sure it's secure? There's a lot of that. Legacy platforms are creeping up more and more. A lot of businesses have old platforms and old tech that runs core systems, and IT are being asked more and more to get involved with it because you've got to fix it, you've got to make it secure. It keeps breaking too often. How can we stop it doing that? So you're having to learn business processes a lot more outside of just technology platforms and what it then affects. As for a third one, I think that one of the biggest challenges is people, is recruitment. The market has gone from being really, really strong for candidates to now being really, really bad for candidates to strong to, in between. It's hard to find the right people for the right role, and then COVID came along and meant people want to work remotely all the time, or so they just want to do hybrid when sometimes you need people on site 5 days a week, and that's difficult to find in itself. So for me, third is probably people.
Yeah, it's always difficult. It's it's a constant challenge that I think a lot of IT directors throw up, and there's no silver bullet, I think, to it. There's loads of little things that you can do to help improve it, and we've talked about some of them earlier on today. So, but yeah, it's always going to be a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're in an industry which has a skills gap.
Yeah.
Is there anything you think tech leaders can do to help bridge that skills gap, or do you think it's too far gone at that point?
I think tech leaders need to really put a lot of emphasis on training and developing their teams, because the better your team is, the more that they can do and the better your function runs within the business. And then if they go on and keep that same mindset and do that for teams that they might manage, we're going to have a lot more people in the industry who have better skills and they're more adaptable to different situations and different tech platforms. I think tech leaders as well need to break away from that old mindset of we'll build it, or we'll keep this really, really old platform running that, is doing something for us. They need to embrace the pain, unfortunately, and start moving to industry standard best practice platforms. Let's go SaaS, let's move to cloud, let's get rid of that really old piece of failing hardware that runs really critical piece of part of the business, do away with it and put it somewhere that has then support functions behind it as well.
Yeah, you got to change. You've got to move with the times. We know it's like in tech. Things move so quickly. If you're not moving with it, you are definitely being left behind.
Yeah.
And that feeds into everything. If your technology starts getting old, you're going to find it harder to recruit because people are going to be less interested. The longer you leave it, the more expensive it's going to be to change it. It's the quicker you can get on it.
Exactly.
The better. Cool. One thing when I'm talking to IT directors constantly about is their training and development. You're managing your team, you're helping them train to be the best they can possibly be, you're dealing with board members and CEOs, etc., etc. It feels like the IT director's ability to train them, to go through training, relies on them really. It's on their shoulders to go, okay, I've got to take control of my own self-development here. Is there anything out there that you've heard of or seen which has been useful to you for your self-development, or how do you manage it?
I don't think. I certainly haven't come across anything that I found useful. For me, I focus on speaking to a lot of people to understand what issues they're facing within their own leadership roles and boardrooms. I'm very fortunate enough that my partner works for quite a big business in quite a senior role, so she can give me a lot of information as to these are some of the challenges we might face, or these are some of the things that they'll pose, or questions they might challenge IT on. But one of the key things for me has always been keeping my finger on the pulse with tech. How can I be expected to come up with the best strategy and vision for technologies within a business if I am 5 years out of date? In my mind, that doesn't work. So that's a key training element for me, and that's just in my spare time, looking at platforms, getting on free training websites, getting trials to cloud platforms, as well as talking to tech people in the industry, going to Octo sessions with your suppliers, seeing what their customers are dealing with, seeing what they're getting queried about, and being able to do that research and make a better decision based on that.
It feels crazy to me there's not an industry standard way of training up within that IT director role or senior leadership role. Like you see in technical positions, you can get certified in things and togass and whatever it might be. Yeah. But in leadership, I think it's really difficult to go out and find something which is valuable. I think network you mentioned there is obviously really important, but again, I do think, which is one of the things we're trying to do with this podcast, is I think especially in the Midlands, there's a lack of network between IT directors. Most of the stuff that happens is London, or they do some great stuff in Leeds, but in the Midlands I think there's not a lot available to people, and I think you're right, you can get a lot from just sitting in a room with your peers, understanding their challenges and going, okay, I've been through that, it's not just me. You can take some comfort from that, but they've also approached it maybe in a different way to what you have, and I think that's again what we're trying to do with the podcast is get people to hear from other local IT directors and hear their story, and I think people can hopefully learn from that, and then one day hopefully we'll do some events as well, which would be nice. But yeah, I think you're right, I think it's difficult.
It is, yeah. I can think of one, I know one supplier I've worked with for many years who do an event every year where you'll go and sit with them, they call it Office of the CTO, and you'll talk about what the challenges you're facing are, what the challenges they've seen and faced from their customers, how they've addressed them, and talk about what your roadmap is for the business in terms of tech. And they'll often, either you'll leave the room feeling very validated, yes, we're on the right track, great, or you'll come away with some bits going, ooh, never really thought of that. That's really, really helpful.
Yeah, I think it's important for IT directors to make time for themselves to do that, because it's a busy job.
That's why I'm here today.
Thank you very much. Okay, and then one of the big things I know you want to talk about when we're talking about in the prep was stress, and the stress IT teams are under these days. Just talk to me a little bit about why you felt that was important to bring it.
I've experienced it, having come through the ranks. I know what it's like to have a business expecting so much from you that you'll work your 8-9 hour day and then go home, work for another 4 or 5 hours, get up early, do a little bit before you go to the office. As well as I see it in my teams. I've seen it in my teams for a long time. There's a lot of expectation for them to deliver and just continually deliver. And because tech drives everything that a business does, you can't reach out to your customer if your phones don't work. That's a tech thing. You can't email them. It's all tech. And because that has to be working and fixed as quickly as is humanly possible when it's not, people often forget that there are people doing that work, as well as the work in the backgrounds to make sure it's the best it can be, making sure it's secure. So I'm keen for people to understand that, yes, if you have an issue, yes, it does affect you and your role, and it does affect the business. But just remember, in the background, there is still a person who is facing the same sort of stress as you, but from 20, 30, 50 different people. And just take a step back and go, all right, I'm not going to go and shout at my help desk engineer over there. I'm not going to go and kick off the IT director because this project's done it. It's not delivered when I wanted it to be, regardless of when they told us it was going to be. It's just, I want people to understand that IT is helping you do all the roles that you're doing, do all the things and help the business grow. And there are people doing that. Be mindful of that and understand that is a key thing for me.
Have you noticed the pressure getting worse on IT teams? The reason I ask that is I think you've seen online, social media and stuff, it's very easy for people to sit behind a keyboard and complain. I wonder if that's fed into the workplace at all.
I think it's very, very easy for IT teams to over-deliver and then get stuck in a cycle where they're just doing that forever without telling you, as a leader, and without telling the business about the extra input they're doing outside of their working hours. Because of the pressure, I think that they will not tell a true picture as to how stressed they are, because they know if they can't deliver something, the impact is much greater to the business than it is to them. So I'd say I've definitely seen teams feel that stress and pressure a lot more. But as a leader, it's then my responsibility to know my team well enough to see when they're starting to crack and deal with it and help address it before they get to that point. And sometimes that means standing in front of your senior stakeholders and saying, I'm sorry, but this project now needs to go on hold because we've got X, Y, and Z we're dealing with. Sometimes it's standing in front of stakeholders in the business who are very, very upset and frustrated and say, I'm really, really sorry, but yes, there is an issue. We are looking at it. Please don't come and poke my team members every 5 minutes and say, well, have you done it yet? Yeah, that's sort of where my head's at with it.
Yeah, I do agree. Like, I think it's a leader's responsibility to alleviate that where they can. It's exactly the situation you just said there. I said, don't come and poke my team, come and talk to me. That's where I think a leader has to take the brunt of that.
Yeah.
And shield the team a little bit. Because I think that's the leader's responsibility, isn't it? It's creating an environment where they can do their best work, and if they're constantly being shouted at or feel like what they're doing isn't good enough from the business, yes, sometimes clear expectations need to be set, but I think if it's getting to a point where it's negatively impacting their work, then a leader has to step in and take the brunt of that.
Yeah, definitely.
I totally get it. Okay. We'll come to our final question, which we always finish with on the lookout. So we have lots of people listening to this who want to move into an IT director position. Obviously, you've recently done that. So for any of those inspiring to become an IT director, what's the one piece of advice you would give them?
Oh, narrowing it down to one's a challenge because there's lots, but don't be afraid to do what is best for you, even if you feel like sometimes it's selfish. And what I mean by that is, if you are at a business where you're not progressing and developing in the way that you want to, it's okay to tell the business that and find somewhere that will meet those needs. It's okay to push back and say, I can't do this right now because I've got X, Y, and Z to do, as well as it's okay to continually harass your boss sometimes to say, this is a technology I really believe in and I think is right for us. Let's just get a POC in and move forward. Let's try it. And part of that being selfish is being able to stand up for yourself and tell your CEO, I think this is the wrong thing to do. Don't sit and argue with them and get into confrontation, but absolutely say, I don't believe this is the right move for what we're doing. And if they say, tough, we're going along with it, I've made my peace, just want to make you aware. Don't be afraid to do that. And don't be afraid to voice something that maybe no one else has said.
Yeah.
Stand up in a room and say, this is a great idea, let's do that. Don't be afraid to do that.
Great advice.
It's been a pleasure, thank you.